ChatGPT, that plucky little AI that came into our lives less than a year ago under the guidance of the OpenAI company. An exciting and wonderful example of the kind of technology in the future that fills people with both dread, joy, anticipation, fear, and other emotions that I can't think of right now. The really wonderful thing about ChatGPT is that it can kind of be anything. And also, the really scary thing about ChatGPT is it can kind of be anything. I'm Nat K, the Science Gay, and it's my job to help you as a provider, as a student, or as a scientist understand how ChatGPT can help you, the things that are going to happen with it in the future, what it can't do, and how it works to the best of my ability. I want to make it clear, I am not a programmer. I have never really done any programming except in R and a couple of other fringe languages like Logo. But I hope that with my deep dive that I have personally gone on as a non-programmer, I can transfer that knowledge to you in this video. Remember that we're all in this together, and if we don't understand it, then someone else will, and they'll use it against us. So let's get into it. So, let's start with the beginning. Why should you care? One, ChatGPT gives you the opportunity to do a lot of stuff that you don't like faster, way faster. Two, you probably want to know whether or not ChatGPT is going to take your job. It's not going to take your job, but I can tell why you're worried. I'm sure that makes sense, and we're going to talk about the details in a minute. Three, we're on three, right? It's in our best interest as providers to understand how this stuff works before someone else does and then tries to sell us something that we don't understand, and then we get scammed. You don't want to get scammed. I don't want to get scammed. So that's kind of where I came from here. So let's get into it. Let's talk a little bit about what ChatGPT is. I'm going to show you some specific examples. OpenAI is the company that makes ChatGPT. When people are talking about ChatGPT, what they're talking about is they're talking about this specific AI. When they say AI, they mean artificial intelligence, and usually what they mean by that is they mean a neural network. A neural network, from what I understand, is a series of individual nodes or whatever that link together and try and generate a response based on some request that you, the person that's asking it to do the thing, made. If it wins at the request, then it strengthens the pieces that held it together that made it decide to do the thing. If it doesn't do the thing successfully, or if it doesn't use specific pieces of its network, those connections get less connected. And so over time, it develops connections between things that are related or important, and it weakens connections between things that aren't. But what you want is you want to know how this works, right? Let's go to ChatGPT. So in order to do this, you're going to have to make an account. Here are the three main things. ChatGPT is the thing that you hear about on the internet or on the news. This is the thing. It's the smart thing. It has a bland personality and it answers questions. DALL-E, I don't know what that stands for, by the way, makes pictures. It makes art from descriptions in language, just like it says. You type in something and then it makes a picture. I generally don't like to play with that because it feels a little bit exploitative. I mean, where did it get those pictures from anyway, right? And the API, I don't know what API stands for. It's basically the thinking parts, but not the memory parts of ChatGPT. And it allows you to put the thinking parts of ChatGPT in other stuff. A lot of these programs that use other things are pulling from ChatGPT to run their thing. That's how this works. Let's go to ChatGPT and give you an example. So, here we are. You're probably wondering, why should I care about ChatGPT? I'm already doing great as a doctor or as a nurse or as whatever else. That's totally fair, and I think that you've got a great point. So what's something that's no fun? What's something that you don't like to do? Well, let's come up with an example. This one? Yes. Awesome. Here is an example of a thing that I did. So basically, I dictated this paragraph for a homework assignment where I wrote this by essentially just talking to, in my case, Microsoft Word, where we were supposed to talk about situations in medicine that were difficult for us. Don't worry, this is not any patient identifying information. There's nothing transpiring here that's going to put any of my patients at risk. I'm not violating HIPAA by showing you this and all that jazz. I have dictated a paragraph. I say I've dictated a paragraph, and then I just paste it in here. And then I tell it, can you please, and I say the talk to text has produced text, but I need it cleaned up for spelling, grammar, and clarity. So you shove it in there, and then it just fixes it for you. So here is the exact same info, but put into something that is written by someone who can make a coherent sentence. I have an English degree. I could have done this myself, but I couldn't have done it myself in 10 seconds. This took 10 seconds. Essentially, this allows you to dictate stuff and then save a whole bunch of work. And here's the other really cool thing. Now that it's done a great job, I can actually tell it great job. it doesn't always work. So I think that it's important to recognize here that ChatGPT has the potential to do a lot of really cool stuff, right? Side note, I actually used ChatGPT to help me write the script for this exact video, and I used AI to help me do the editing, which is why the editing is so incredibly... Gotcha. I added that part. So we made a request to ChatGPT, we gave it instructions, and we got an answer. And you may ask yourself, well, how did I get here? And that's an entirely valid question, because the way that ChatGPT works is not transparent. We talk about visibility and transparency in AI, if you're looking for Google terms, in terms of like, how did AI come to the answer that you asked for? Neural networks are not like Wikipedia. They're not like a dictionary. They're not like other things that we're looking up in a one-to-one way. It's not like up to date. The thing is that the way that ChatGPT comes up with an answer is it has a bunch of different neurons, which hopefully will appear on screen if I do my editing properly, and that database of information that it has digested will strengthen the correct answer and weaken the incorrect answer. Basically, if it gets the correct answer, it is rewarded. If it gets the incorrect answer, it's not. And ChatGPT went through lots and lots of training so that it could figure out which answers made sense and which answers didn't. And that's why it's usually correct. Usually. See, the thing is, you can count on ChatGPT to give you an answer if the answer is simple and obvious. Most of the time. For example, I asked ChatGPT, what is the last digit of the number pi? And it told me that the last digit was 1. Now, we both know that the last digit of pi is not 1. The last digit of pi doesn't exist because it's pi. So I followed up by asking it, are you sure? And it said, no, actually, there is no last digit of the number pi. So you could cross-examine its results if you are suspicious. I've also had issues where ChatGPT has given me example questions that couldn't make sense, where I asked it for a step 1 style question where it was about infectious diseases. I picked infectious diseases specifically because those answers tend to be pretty easy, right? They tend to be pretty simple. Someone's either got the bug or they don't got the bug. Someone either has a gram-positive bacteria or they don't have a gram-positive bacteria. They got a fever or they don't got a fever. Admittedly, it's more complicated than that, I know, but I figured that this was the way to go to give it something that was a nice low ball, right? So it gives me something that's simultaneously herpes and chlamydia and gonorrhea, because it says that it finds intracellular bacteria, but also that it's a virus. Now, you can't find a virus on microscopy. At least I've never found a virus on microscopy. I guess you could look at how respiratory syncytial virus works. I mean, that's not the point. The point is that if it's a, and the thing is that I got the tip off that it was an STI because they go into detail like, oh, this is a risky sexual behaviors person or whatever, whatever third degree we get whenever we talk to someone like this or we talk about someone like this, right? All of the various value-based judgments that we do or don't use. The point is, it was obviously an STI question, and yet at the same time, ChatGPT was incapable of giving me a clear question where it was one specific thing. And I recognize that superinfections occur where someone has multiple STIs. That's totally a thing. That is not the kind of thing you would get on a step 1 question. I don't think. But anyway, it was weird, and it concerns me. My point is, you can't just trust what ChatGPT gives you right out of the gate. You have to cross-examine it. And this is what worries me about AI, because I worry that people are going to use AI in the context of just kind of guessing at stuff and they don't actually know what they're doing. I'm worried that patients are going to look at AI and they're going to use it the way that they've been using WebMD, and they're going to think that they have cancer or something. Fortunately, ChatGPT will tell you to go to the doctor if you report symptoms that justify going to the doctor. ChatGPT has been pretty clear about that, and I think that that's pretty great. So let's talk about the strengths and weaknesses of AI. Now, it's important to understand that AI has the ability to process large volumes of data quickly and accurately, but it also has issues. Like, for example, it relies on quality data, and so as a result, there can be biases that prevent it from necessarily coming to the right conclusion. You and I are aware of those biases, hopefully, in us and in the world outside of us, for sure. And so we recognize a source as more or less legitimate or more or less trustworthy depending on certain red flags that we may or may not notice. ChatGPT doesn't know that. ChatGPT has a lot of trouble recognizing whether a source is legitimate or not. As a result, its sort of naiveness means that it can sometimes come to the wrong conclusion. Another thing that's important to recognize is that ChatGPT lacks empathy. It can't literally have empathy because it doesn't have feelings. It's a robot. It's important to recognize that one of the great things about AI, its speed and its ability to look at a lot of data really fast, means that you can look at that data that it summarized or whatever, and you can cross-examine it yourself. You can kind of become the QC for what ChatGPT is looking at. One of the things that I see people do often is they'll take a really complicated research article and read it themselves. I think that it was Answers in Progress that did this. Answer in Progress? They're Answer in Progress, right? One of the things that I've seen is that the channel Answer in Progress talked about this, where essentially they would have someone read an article, and then after that they would have the AI summarize the article, and then they would cross-reference the human being's understanding of the article versus the AI's understanding of the article. And if they agree, then that way we can make sure that the human understands it. And if there's disagreements, then you can go back and double-check to make sure that you understand it, or more likely it's that the AI didn't understand it properly. It's important to recognize that, like I said, AI is a baby right now. It doesn't understand a lot. And even ChatGPT, in all of its finite wisdom, is not great. There are limitations to AI that we need to talk about. Let's talk about the current limitations of AI. AI has an inability to replace the clinical judgment that you and I would have, and it has reliance on what we would refer to as historical data. ChatGPT doesn't have the ability to know anything past September 2021. This is key because in order to make ChatGPT accurate, what its programmers had to do is they had to curate the information to a certain extent. They had to have a cutoff where they're like, we don't have time to keep looking at new history as it develops. And I think we can agree, quite a lot of history has happened in the past couple of years. And as a result, they basically decided that September 2021 was the cutoff, and they're going to analyze all the info that it has before that point to make sure that it's legit. They didn't do a perfect job, but they did a pretty good job. As a result, ChatGPT is pretty accurate about most stuff that happened 2 or 3 years ago or earlier. And I'll prove it right now. So we're going to flop over to ChatGPT and we're going to ask it a question. So I have a specific test question that I like to ask ChatGPT, and we'll do it right now. This is my test question for a very valid reason. Elizabeth II, as we know, is not alive. And not only is she not alive, but she became not alive during the period between September 2021 and now, during the blank period where ChatGPT does not know what happened. It's also important to recognize that Elizabeth II's demise is something that is really, really televised. Everyone would know about it. I mean, it's essentially an event that I think in order to remain apolitical, it is an event that was discussed all around the world. Let's put it that way. Since it's something that everyone knows about, it's the kind of thing that an AI should be able to talk about easily, assuming that it's connected to the internet, which, based on our hypothesis, ChatGPT is not. So let's do it, shall we? Here we are. Let's ask it if Elizabeth II is alive. So you can see here, ChatGPT is apologizing and saying that it doesn't have information after September 2021. Basically, it's telling you, I don't know, go look at the news. That's pretty fair. Interestingly enough, if you go to OpenGPT and then you run a script to check on it, you can actually get it to answer that question. And I can prove it. Here's my AutoGPT. I'll admit that this is kind of a mess. I've worked pretty hard on it, but I'm not very good at this. I could explain what each of them is, but it's not that important. Here's some info about Queen Elizabeth II. As you can see, sometimes it gets the answer and sometimes it doesn't. I think the thing that's really interesting here is that sometimes it can't decide whether or not Queen Elizabeth II is alive, dead, or just very sick. And if you think about it, that kind of makes sense, because Queen Elizabeth being sick is the kind of thing that really technically generates more news articles than Queen Elizabeth II being dead. People generally don't recover from being dead. There's not a lot of updates to be made there. She's just dead, and that's the whole story. It makes sense that if you were to sample all of the news articles about Queen Elizabeth II in the past couple of years, I would say that most of them would be about her passing or her being sick. Incidentally, the way that I got this specific output, which we'll tab over to right now, the way that I got this specific output is interesting because essentially it is from me turning up what they call the temperature. I put a glossary of AI terms in the description section below, but I want to make sure that I take time to talk about what temperature is. Now, temperature is essentially the creativity of AI. It ranges on a scale from 0 to 1, and 1 being the most creative and 0 being almost entirely deterministic. Once the AI has a direction to go in and it's pretty confident that it knows what it's doing, it's just going to stick to it. ChatGPT sits at around 0. There are specific levels of temperature that you should supposedly set the AI to in order to better prepare it to do different tasks. I can find a chart for you right now. Let's go take a look. I'm not sure what GER is. Is that perhaps giraffe? I don't know what P is. This is kind of a sucky example. There was a better one about the capital of Australia. Maybe this is it. I think this is Ruby. So here we are. Essentially, what AutoGPT does is it looks through the internet and it tries to find the most likely answer for what it is that you asked. Let's say you ask it for the capital of Australia. Now, we know that this is the capital of Australia. However, there is some wrong information on the internet. And hopefully you didn't need me to tell you that. And it's important to recognize that sometimes people say that the capital city of Australia is Sydney. So this implies that if you have it set to 0, then this is the ratio at which this will, and I hope I understand this, this is the ratio at which it will guess wrong and say that it's Sydney. If you change the temperature, then it is more likely to say that the capital of Australia is Sydney. Side note, I actually thought the capital of Australia was Sydney until now. I never really thought about, I never needed to know what the capital of Australia was, but I learned something today. So that's great, I guess. So basically that's the idea, is that by changing the temperature of the AI, you can get it to guess more creatively, which can have positive or negative effects. Here's a chart that you can use as kind of a general guideline to look at how you should set things up to write code, to make a chatbot. These are writing related stuff. It's interesting because summarizing text is something that I would have put in as a 0.0, but apparently people are okay with the text being more creatively summarized. That's pretty interesting to me. I was expecting it to be a lot lower than this. Anyway, admittedly, I think that you should play with this and kind of see what the story is. There's another thing I wanted to mention. A while ago, I told you that ChatGPT can't know anything after September 2021. That is not technically true. There are conversations that you can have with it where it will remember those. Effectively, if I was to talk to it about, my favorite color or whatever, and if I continue the conversation, ChatGPT would remember the beginning of the conversation we had. Furthermore, you can do something called custom options, I think is what it's called. That'll allow you to kind of paste text into kind of the background brain of ChatGPT, and apparently it will know that stuff if you ask about it. Let's take a look now, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. Here we are in here. We're talking about Elizabeth II, right? Let's talk about our custom options. So here's our custom instructions. Yeah, okay. Basically it's saying you can customize ChatGPT. Tell us that Queen is alive. Ooh, it's thinking. Wait a minute. I just want to make sure you understand why I'm weirded out right now. I told ChatGPT that Elizabeth II is no longer alive, but I didn't tell ChatGPT when that happened. So how did it get that information? I did not give it that information, and ChatGPT explicitly tells us that it does not have any information about stuff after September 2021. So how? How? This freaks me out a lot. I'm not doing a bit. I literally wasn't expecting that at all. Let's verify that. What? Clearly, there's a lot of stuff behind the scenes here that we kind of still don't know, and I can understand why they're being cagey about this. Side note, I do want to point out, OpenAI as a company, I'm not sure how evil they are. It is kind of amazing that they're letting people just kind of use this for free. It's really amazing if you think about it, the kind of publicity they're getting. I wouldn't have made this video if they hadn't made it free. They basically became famous overnight because of this idea, and it was kind of a cool idea. I want to talk a little bit more about the pricing actually while we're bringing it up. As I said earlier, ChatGPT is free. It doesn't cost anything. If you upgrade to Plus, as you can see here, it costs you $20 a month, and then you can use ChatGPT 4. GPT 4 is faster, supposedly more intelligent, and it has plugins and code and other stuff that I've never actually used before, so I don't know how it works. And I haven't used that because I have negative $0. I want to point out that overall, if you count the software budget for me doing this, I probably spent $10, $12 doing this. That's not that much. The other thing that's really cool is that if you are trying to, let me see if I can go take a look. I think we gotta go, I want to look at my info. Wait, I don't want to do that. How do I, is this it? Is this it? What is this? Share chat with what? Oh, neat. How do I, here we go. Here we are in the setting page, and here's me. That's my account. There's a tutoring thing, which I've never actually bothered to use, and how this works. But what I want to talk to you about is, this is the usage section. So basically the way that it works is you pay for a certain amount per token. There's specific ways to calculate the math, and it's pretty complicated for me. But basically you're paying for tokens, and you can pay for a certain amount per month. I basically have $10 per month. This is my maximum. I'm not paying them $10 per month. I have set a ceiling on $10 per month. And once I hit $10, it won't allow it to run any more money through this thing. I've used quite a bit of I've run quite a bit of AI. Like, I've really done this nonstop for like 4 days trying to figure this out. And even despite that, I've only used like $4 worth of stuff, which is pretty darn good. That's kind of neat. And also, if you sign up, they give you $5, which is somewhere around here. I don't actually know where it is, but point is, it's really great, and I highly recommend you do it if you're interested in applying AI to some other project. Anyways, the API section, which I'm not going to click on so I don't accidentally share personal data with you, basically gives you this long code, and you can use that long code to put it into some like app or something. And the idea is that if I accidentally gave you that API code, then you could use it in your app, and then I would basically be paying for your AI. Hopefully that makes sense. So that's how come you're not supposed to show it to other people. So we've established that AI can answer a complicated question about whether or not Queen Elizabeth II is alive if we provide the context, although I'll admit I'm still a little creeped out because I kind of proved myself wrong as to how it understands memory a while ago. The important question is, why do you care? You care because it'll save you time. You care because it'll make things different. Let's try and come up with a good example, shall we? There's a 62-year-old patient. She has an A1C of 7.9. She's got elevated liver enzymes and a BMI of 32. She's got right upper quadrant pain, and she's been drinking 12 alcoholic drinks per week for about 40 years. Now, I picked this because I think I know where we're going. The idea is that in real life, if you did this, you would probably need a harder example to see how powerful it is. So ChatGPT starts by telling you that it's not a doctor. That's important. So what do we got here? So I see NAFLD. So non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Okay. Gallbladder issues, metabolic syndrome. Yeah. Alcoholic liver disease. That's fair. What about cirrhosis? How do I spell cirrhosis? So ChatGPT thinks that it's NAFLD. So that's great. So that's the answer to the exam question, right? If that's the question. But in real life, it's not an exam question. The real issue is, what do we do now? So what do I do now? What tests should I run? What physical exam? How should I advise the patient? So we're going to go through medical history, physical examination. We'll do a bilirubin check. We'll check albumin. We'll check the INR. Great choice. Prothrombin time. Not a bad idea. We'll check A1C again, because why wouldn't you? We'll do some imaging studies because we need to figure out exactly how messed up the liver is, right? Looks like we'll be doing, I don't know what FibroScan is. We do gallbladder evaluation. Of course, we're going to need to get them into alcohol counseling. That makes sense. We'll talk about weight. We'll talk about diabetes, and then we'll refer to gastro or maybe hepatology. And I get it. Like, you don't need that info because you already know the score. I don't need that info because, I mean, you know, even though I haven't finished my second year yet, I still know what we're doing here. This is not rocket science, which is a bad example because I've done rocket science, but that's not the point. The point is that this isn't hard. However, it's about saving you time. So what if you want to do something else? What if you wanted to convince the patient to stop drinking using AI? Could you do it? Maybe. Let's give it a try. Taking charge of your health, a guide to making positive choices. And you can pause the video and take a closer look if you want to, but you kind of get the idea. Like, this is cool. It tells patients why they should stop drinking. It talks about like positive change. And really what's missing is a section where we refer, like, you see it even says it's not medical advice. What we would do is we would take this, copy and paste it into some other thing like Microsoft Word or Google Docs, and then we clean it up a little bit, and then boom, you've got yourself something ready to go, and you can give it to the patient. Additionally, you could add contact information to this, and you're already on your way to like an actual finished pamphlet that you could use in your clinic. So this represents a massive savings in time. I recognize that in some clinics, that's someone's specific job. And I would never want to take away someone's specific job. I totally get it. But person in the clinic whose job it is for you to make the pamphlets, I'm not saying that you can be replaced by AI, because you can't. But what I am saying is that you could do your job faster with AI. And if you do your job faster, then you either get more free time or get more stuff done, or both. So you should do that. And then that way you won't have to work as hard, and you'll be able to go home and see your kids and whatever else. I don't think that we should be looking at this technology as threatening our jobs. To be clear, it will threaten our jobs if someone in charge is the only person who understands how it works, kind of like what we're seeing with the writer's strike. If the only people who have power over how this works are the people who are running everything and the people who decide how much we get paid, that could be really bad. And that's part of why I think it's so important that we take it into our own hands and learn how this works before someone else does. if that makes sense. There are other pretty interesting things that you can do or that I'm really fond of doing while I'm in the clinic. Like for example, I often have patients telling me that they're uncomfortable taking medicine A and medicine B at the same time, which is totally fair. I mean, they don't know how they work, right? Like they just have to trust us, which sometimes they don't trust us, which is understandable because, I usually try and ask ChatGPT specifically about 2 medicines together just to refresh my memory so that I remember how they work and discuss that. A while ago, we had a patient who was talking to us about metoprolol and losartan. Now, you know as well as I do that metoprolol and losartan together, that's nothing new. We've seen it before. It's not that weird. But I specifically wanted to ask ChatGPT to make sure that I had a pretty solid understanding of how this works. And you have to keep in mind, I am a medical student. I haven't memorized everything yet. I'm trying, but this is kind of partly how I study also. And you know what? Actually, we still have this history of this conversation, even though it's from several days. This is from yesterday. So we go with, help me explain the safety of these together in plain English to the patient. Let's do it. I love this. Metoprolol is like a traffic cop. It slows down your heart a bit and makes it work more smoothly. It also helps lower your blood pressure. I've heard worse explanations. Losartan is like a relaxer for your blood vessels, making it easier for your heart to pump blood and reducing the pressure in your pipes. Using both together can be like having 2 friends who work well together to keep your heart and blood pressure in check. But remember, your doctor knows best, so always follow their advice and ask them any questions you have. And isn't that great? Like, that's a pretty clean explanation. It took 30 seconds to say and 10 seconds to get, and it's not condescending. It's intellectually honest. This saves lives if it convinces patients to take their medicine on time. I'm on board. Are you on board? Where am I? Where's my house? Wow, all this AI stuff sure is cool. I can't wait to put lots of patient identifying information in this AI. Where do I sign up? Let's set aside some warnings right here and right now. Don't do that. I don't think something bad will happen. I think like I'm 80 or 90% sure nothing bad would happen, but that's not sure enough for me. I like things to be very sure, and I bet you like things to be very sure, right? So don't put patient identifying information into ChatGPT or into any other AI, especially one that's connected to the internet, because you don't know where that's going to go. But how am I going to do that if I don't put the patient identifying information into the AI? How am I going to make my doctoring faster? If you are dictating something and you were going to put it into ChatGPT to have it dictated, make sure you rip out all the patient identifying information, which actually by practice is what I always do whenever I'm working in any non-secure platform, including ones on my own personal computer. Even my patient notes, I use code names for everybody, but that's just me personally. You do you. But how long do they keep the information that I put in there anyway? There are some interesting discussions on the back end of ChatGPT where they've talked about how long they keep like token requests or receipts or whatever it is that, apps that run ChatGPT or use OpenAI are doing. And apparently it's 30 days. After 30, at least this is what I've heard. After 30 days, they delete whatever request or info is on the back end of whatever it was that they were doing. However, as you can see here, I have stuff from months ago. Like I have stuff that goes all the way back to, this is the past 30 days. This is about how pneumothoraces work. This is about Queen Elizabeth again. Like the thing is that there is so much stuff here for just like, this is from May, okay? And that's more than 30 days. This is about migraines and arachnoid cysts. The point is that like there's a lot of info in this thing, and it's only secured by just your account and your password that you put in there. It doesn't have two-factor authentication. I don't know if the people running ChatGPT can go in here and look at the stuff that I wrote, but I just wanted to be really sure that you know that you should not put any patient identifying information anywhere other than where your specific clinic says it's okay and it is secured. So just so you know. I'd like to rewind here. The original purpose of this project, the original direction that I was planning on going in was I wanted to make an AI to address one of the key issues that I saw in healthcare, which is that patients don't understand their insurance. I don't understand their insurance. Does anybody understand their insurance? Do you understand their insurance? I don't even think the insurance companies understand their insurance. The thing that really freaked me out is that they would come in here and they would ask us a question that we couldn't have the answer to. Even when we got the readout back from the computer, there was no way for us to be sure if it was legit or not. And that's why I thought, okay, well, maybe what we can do is we can have an AI solve the problem for us. Maybe we can have an AI constantly looking at like information about insurance, and then it'll be able to accurately answer a patient's question where they ask something like, is Focalin XR covered on my insurance? Now, I want to make it totally clear. I put days and days and days of work into trying to figure this out. I've never worked so hard. The thing is that I'm pretty sure it's not possible. At least it's not possible yet, and there were a couple of main reasons. Reason number one is that I don't have any idea what I'm doing. This is not a thing that I'm any good at. I don't know how to do this. Reason two is actually compelling. It's because AI, OpenAI, AutoGPT, it can't read PDFs and it can't read Excel spreadsheets. All that information is in some gigantic spreadsheet. So here we are at the HCA website for Washington State. Here's the Apple Health preferred drug list. So this is the list that you would be looking at when you're talking to a patient that's on like Medicare, Medicaid, whatever. They're on like United Healthcare, for example, or Molina, and you want to talk to them about the things. Well, you have to open that as, and you can see I've done this before, you have to open that as a spreadsheet, as an XLSX spreadsheet. ChatGPT can't read that. That's a problem, because like there's no way for it to get the information out of it. The fascinating thing is that you can see on the back end when OpenAI is running, OpenGPT is running, and you can see it looking for specific medications that you ask for, but it can't actually get any information about them because it can't look inside the spreadsheet or the PDF. But there's another issue. Currently, the best AIs that are available in the context of OpenAI's work cannot make a request greater than 4,096 tokens. What's a token? I tried to ask ChatGPT, but from what I understand, I know what a token isn't. A token isn't a letter of the alphabet. So it's not something greater than 4,000 letters. It's something else. I'm not actually sure. I can tell you that if something exceeds 4,096 tokens, it's too big of an ask for ChatGPT to figure out what it means. In some situations when I was running OpenGPT, it didn't just say no, it actually crashed the whole thing and it wouldn't run anymore. And I had to restart the thing. That includes the response too. It's not just it thinking about the thing, the response is included in that request, and the response included has to be less than 4,096 tokens. What is a token in AI terms? According to ChatGPT, a token is a unit of text or a sequence of characters that a language model uses to process and understand language. So here are some examples of tokens. Basically, they're parts of speech or blocks of speech that it uses to understand things. Apparently, tokenization methods vary, and as a result, there are some situations where things take more tokens or less tokens. If I understand this properly, which I'm not sure that I do. There's another thing that I wanted to be sure I commented on. There are insurance websites and insurance-adjacent websites that have code specifically in their websites that stop AI from interacting with them. They're blocking AI. It means that you can't automate a system to understand how insurance works. It's interesting because essentially this is an impossible task. There is a brick wall that has been explicitly put in place by insurance companies. All I can do is throw my hands up and say that I found something that really is a kind of journalistic merit, but I haven't actually generated a product that is able to perform for patients, at least not yet. But we've been talking a lot about ChatGPT and OpenAI, and I think that's great, but there are lots of other really interesting fringe things in the context of AI that you probably deserve to know about. I mean, for example, would you like to be able to use your own voice to speak any language? You would, right? That'd be pretty cool. You can. Let me show you. Here we are on 11 Labs. This is my voice, set to my voice setting. The way that we did it is if you take at least 1 minute of your voice and then shove it in there, then it'll analyze it and then it'll use it to produce a voice. Everybody knows that you can't break the law if they make you check a box, right? So it's fine. All jokes aside, I want to be sure you know about this because it would be really bad if you got scammed by this. You know, someone's identity got stolen or someone's personal information got stolen or some other terrible thing happened. So you need to know that with only a 1 minute clip of someone's voice, their voice can be cloned using AI and fraudulent activities can take place. They have two sections here. They have a multilingual one and they have an English one. So English one is supposed to sound like USA English, and then the multilingual one is supposed to be able to handle things like UK English accents, German, Spanish, Portuguese. I got it to speak Russian as well. Here's me. Let's use it. I would like to talk about, let's say I want to use, let's just pick something simple. Let's do that. This should be good, right?
The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog. The quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog.
Pretty impressive, right? As exciting as it is, I'm sure that the potential for fraud is apparent to you. And that's why I thought it was so important that you be aware of this. There are some other really interesting examples too. Did you know that UpToDate has an entire article inside it on AI? You can go look at it right now. You have access to UpToDate, probably. So you should go take a look and see. If you just type in artificial intelligence into UpToDate, there is a whole thing that gives you like just a full article about all of the different ways that artificial intelligence is being used to change medicine. There are sections specifically with lots of really cool articles on like how this all works and what the story is, but I think it's important for you to understand that this is going to impact the way that we perform care. I mean, you've seen how EKGs are evolving now. We're at a situation where EKGs are trying to diagnose our patients before we even get a chance to look at the EKG. And this is just the next extension of that. It's important that we're not afraid of this. It's important that we accept it as somewhat inevitable and just understand how this is going to change our practice. But I hear you talking. You're probably concerned about how this is going to take your job or how this is going to impact your practice. It doesn't have to. Admittedly, things are going to change as technology develops, but I think that it probably will be for the better. I realize that apropos of nothing, it might be worth it to ask ChatGPT whether or not it's going to take our job. And I did. ChatGPT literally says that the point of AI is augmentation and not replacement. And that although it's going to make us more efficient and allow us to look at complex things and learn things faster, it can't replace the ethics. I even went into detail to ask whether or not automation of ethics is possible. And I was expecting ChatGPT to tell me that that automation of anything is possible, because I figured that ChatGPT would inherently be optimistic about its own development. ChatGPT explicitly said that it did not think that automation of ethics was possible. I recognize that ChatGPT can't step outside of itself in much the same way that you or I can't really step outside of ourselves. But I find it somewhat encouraging that even ChatGPT acknowledges that it can't replace ethics, that automation of ethics is, at least on a philosophical level, somewhat impossible without the human element. And I think that's really an important piece of medicine. I think that some of us might be a little bit nervous about how powerful these artificial intelligence tools are becoming, especially when you consider the fact that where I am right now, we're kind of being taught to be robots, so no wonder it feels a little bit discouraging. I think in some ways it's exciting because it gives us an opportunity to replace some of what I would refer to as the squalid drudgery of medicine. You don't get to have dinner with your family. You don't get to see your kids before they go to sleep. Wouldn't it be great if there was a way for us to do that without losing this time that we don't get back? I mean, the robots are not alive. Like, they don't really care if they have to work overtime. And I know that some of you might say, well, that's taking hours away from a scribe. That's taking hours away from a professional writer. That's taking hours away from an intern, or maybe even taking shadowing potential away from a potential medical student. I think that there will always be jobs for those of us in medicine. I think that this actually gives us the opportunity to do more with what we have. And also, it's important to recognize that in these tiny clinics, like the one that I've been in over the past few weeks, they just don't have the money to bring in another person. If they can use AI to make something possible, if they can use AI to make something work, it basically takes a job that wouldn't happen into a job that would happen. And for those clinicians that are working all those extra hours, it maybe gives them the opportunity to get their lives back. And in some ways, I think that is a form of justice, actually. One of the things that stood out to me over the past few years is the overwhelming decision-making process that I'm being kind of faced with as a future provider. I keep getting told by real adults that I'm gonna have to grow up at some point and make some big decision about what I want to do with my life. And I can't be everywhere at once. And I can't help everyone at once. I can't get every degree. I can't have every specialty. I can't protect everyone. And I think that one of the things that has maybe been the most frustrating is that there have been times when I haven't been there. There have been people that I haven't been able to keep safe. Patients, and also friends and loved ones, family members. That has really weighed on me. And if I was going to guess, I bet it's weighed on some of you, because it's a really tough conflict to have. When do we take lunch? When do we take a nap? When do we just go home? But I'm rejecting that. And for a while I rejected it out of, I think, reckless youth. I think I just took the approach that my goal is to just work and work and work, and I'll just keep going because I'm just different. But that doesn't make any sense. It's not science. But I've seen what AI can do so far, and I know that it's so new, and I know that it's just in its infancy. I know that we're not there yet. I know that we have a long way to go. But after what I've seen, based on this deep dive that I've done, I have some small amount of hope that those grown-ups who told me that I couldn't be everywhere at once and I couldn't help everyone were wrong. And maybe someday, maybe in the far future, when AI has reached some deep, terrifying singularity, maybe someday I will be able to be everywhere at once, and I will be able to help everyone at once. Maybe someday I will be able to take a break. Not today, though. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. If you like this video, I would really encourage you to like the video with the button, comment underneath, subscribe, and I'm sure that I'll be adding more stuff later on. And, share your opinions, share your comments, share this with other people. I want you to talk about this. I hope you learned something from this. I hope that this wasn't too dry. I had a great time doing this, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to go to Unity Clinic Northwest and learn everything that I did from them. And I am confident that this will make me a better doctor, and I'm so grateful. I'm so moved. The kindness and generosity that they have shown me is boundless and inspiring. And I hope someday that when I'm a real doctor, I'm going to be just like them. Thank you so much. Until next time, I've been Nat K the Science Gay. I hope that you've had a great time, and I'll see you next time. I realize that we have, gone through this and given some examples and told you how it works, yada, yada, yada. But the fact of the matter is, I haven't actually given you any practical hands-on experience yet, unless you've been following along with me like this is some kind of preschool sing-along, right? Okay, well, here's the deal. I was thinking that I could give you some really cool homework assignment where we use some imaginary patient and you write out an imaginary differential You don't want to do that? Really? You don't want to do that? Are you sure? You don't want to go home and do more fake work to practice being at work? Really? Well, I have another idea, an idea that's way easier than that. So I was thinking what we would do is we would have a poetry contest here at the clinic. My plan is, here's the rules. Rule number 1, the theme is summer. Write me a poem about the summer. Rule number 2, write me a poem using an AI. I want you to include the prompt that you gave the AI, the name of the AI that you used. I'm willing to bet that there's probably an AI specifically for poetry, but if I'm entirely honest, I haven't actually checked. And, of course, the output. Rule number 3, you are not allowed to change the AI poem when it comes out of the AI. You're only allowed to change the prompt. This is a great way for us to practice because that way you'll see how by changing the prompt that you give the AI, you can change the poem that it gives you. First prize, which will be decided by ChatGPT, is going to be a $10 gift certificate to Mallard Ice Cream right down the street. In addition to that, I'm going to put your name and your poem with the prompt associated with it on my poster presentation, which I will present to the rest of my medical school class. I intend to read that poem out loud to the rest of my class. Also, if you would like me to, I will encode that poem into an actual AI voice of whatever celebrity you want. Just let me know. Second prize. Second prize is a $5 gift certificate to Mallard Ice Cream, and second prize will be judged by me. I do have an English degree, so of the many things that you would think that I wouldn't be qualified to do, this is actually something that I've done before. And I am a published poet, believe it or not. So there is that. In a way, I guess this is perhaps one of the things that I'm most qualified to do since I got here, ironically enough. To be clear, my plan for asking ChatGPT to judge the poems is I'm going to put the poem in and I'm going to ask it to give me a grade out of 100 for the poem, based on just its merits. And if we have any ties, I'll just put them next to each other and we'll do a tiebreaker and ask ChatGPT for a tiebreaker. And I will give you the full background. Couple of notes. We're on the honor system here. If you write your own poem and don't use AI, I guess I'll never know. But what fun would that be, right? You could just not enter the contest if you didn't want to do it, right? Anyways, this contest is going to run until Monday, the 28th of August. Submit your poems by Sunday, the 27th of August at midnight. So I'm looking forward to everyone's submissions. This is just a lighthearted thing, just so you can learn the deal. I hope that you have a great time learning, and I hope that it's fun for you. And I hope that in the process you get some experience playing around with ChatGPT, so that you can kind of see the epiphany that I saw. I know that this is a really nerdy thing to be excited about, but admittedly, this is really great, and I think that you deserve the same kind of fun that I have been having. I promise you, this is pretty cool. So get out there, go and have fun, let your creative side out, and don't worry about it being perfect, because we're all kind of playing on the same field, and this is just a bit of fun. So I hope to see what you're making. It's going to be great.